I obviously did not spend enough time on this topic. I had one guy try to argue with me in the comment section. Hey, listen to me. I get it, man. And I already addressed this point. A lot of you were brought up in the participation award era. And you guys believe that Errol Spence, a guy who couldn't even do better than Me Machine, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Although, again, I've explained this process while, during the, getting up to the fight between him and Terrence Crawford. I told you guys, I explained his whole career to a T. You got the fight of Kelbrook coming off a loss, moving down 2 weight classes. You got the fight Mickey Garcia, moving up 2 weight classes. You understand Danny Garcia and Sean Porter, there was only a set number of guys, they were all PBC fighters that actually got to fight for titles. Sean Porter himself was only a 2-time champ, and we're talking about 10 plus years in boxing. Danny Garcia again, Keith Thurman, these were the only guys that were allowed to fight for belts. They eventually included Ugas. Ugas had to chase, Errol Spence through basically, 3 sanctioning bodies? He earned #1 contender status multiple times, and they would always just go for another opponent. Errol Spence himself said that Ugas does nothing for my career. I'd rather fight Jesse Vargas. Another thing, too, is when I do these boxing videos, the sad part is you guys are diehard fans for these guys, but I know more about your fighter than you do. You know what I'm saying? I do my research. I don't, try to stay ignorant on the topic. There is a lot of work that goes into this. There's a lot of digging. I even know what Derek James and Errol Spence would be talking about when they're in training camp. They always shied away from the topic of Crawford. I know that Spence's daddy didn't even want him to fight Terrence Crawford. His daddy was telling him to stay away from Terrence Crawford. I know that Spence acquired his drinking from his mother. You know what I'm saying? It was his dad that was the more disciplined person in the equation. Errol Spence takes up more like his mom than he does his father, by the way. But his daddy was very protective, and it was his mom that was kind of, push Spence to, into the behavior that you kind of exhibit today. So on top of that, he's a mama's boy, but that's okay. Terrence Crawford, we know that his mom raised him, but his mom raised him with tough love. You understand? Spence is a guy you can tell who was coddled, and he was his mom's little baby. You understand? But let's get back to the topic after I've digressed heavily here. I probably forgot more things about Errol Spence than a lot of you that claim to be his diehard fans and want him to receive a participation award. But the thing is this, the dude couldn't even do what Me Machine did to Terrence Crawford. Me Machine is more nuanced than Errol Spence. I told you guys that Errol Spence is a button masher. I told you his combinations. I told you his tendencies. I told you his patterns. Square, square, triangle, square, square, triangle. Left hook, right hook to the body. Same old crap. And this is crazy because he doesn't really have knockout power. It's his technique. He destroys his own power. He keeps too low and things like that. If you guys, these videos, they're still online. You can go back and you can hold me to my word. Like I said, I put a lot of work and research into these things. I just don't come out here blind hating like a bunch of you guys. For me, it's not about emotions. This channel, I like to deal with the truth. And the problem is a lot of you can't handle the truth. So when I tell you that Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford is not going to be an anticlimactic fight, it's not a true 50-50 fight. I've already gone through this process. Some of you, you're barely just catching on to this channel. I'm not one of those YouTubers that comes out with 5 or 6 videos a day, so I can get my clicks, views, and likes. I'm also not a YouTuber who has to jump on the bandwagon. I'm not going to do that. I don't follow the narratives that the TV, wants me to follow, and I don't see the life the way the things that the TV tells me I should see life, But regardless, it was a one-sided fight, just like I told you guys. I told you guys this guy's not skilled. He's a button masher, square, square, triangle, all that. I told you guys even that Crawford was going to clip him early. You understand? Crawford was going to pick up on Spence's basic moveset pretty early on. That ended up being the case too. I get it. I get it from your guys' perspective. They have tried to kill merit in this country. And everything's a participation award today. They're more concerned about people's feelings than telling people the truth and getting people to accept the truth today. And it's no different with this whole Errol Spence situation. You guys, when you lost and you weren't great at things, you understand you never reached a high level like me. I reached Division I football, for example. That's just one thing. I'm also a military guy. I was held to high standards, and I do come from a poor background. You know, my parents were not educated, just GED. You understand? It wasn't in my family to push for greatness, but just hard work and keeping us to a high standard is what pushed me and my brothers along. But, a lot of you, when you lost, even as kids, you were being groomed to accept defeat and to accept low standards. So, when you lost, whatever sport you tried to play in, and you probably ended up giving up, when you lost, let's say it was soccer, you probably still got a trophy for getting last place in the tournament. You know what I'm saying? And this has had a devastating effect on the youth, especially, but just in the past couple of generations alone. So you guys have piss poor standards. Now, couple that with things like DEI, you understand, and feminism and everything else. Yes, they have to kill merit today. So I definitely understand it from your perspective. I understand how you think in your ranking system. It's very piss poor and it's low. Another thing too is, I'll give you another example. Out of the top 40 developed nations, America ranks last, and we spend the most money on education. You know what I'm saying? They're teaching you how to be stupid. They're teaching you how to be the village idiot. You know what I'm saying? They don't want you to be smart. They don't want you to have your own thought process. They don't want you to be an individual. They want you to be how a lot of you are, and you just follow the narrative just like the rest of the herd. You guys don't really think for yourselves. You have eyes, but you don't really see with your eyes. You see how you're told to see with your eyes, and you're told how to think, how to use your brain and think instead of, learning that stuff on your own. But regardless, I get it. It's all become participation award today. Hall of Fame was meant for exceptional individuals. And today, they manufacture fighters today. Do you understand? What used to separate black American fighters, although it was a pain to deal with, but it kept people humble. It kept them on their A game. You know what I'm saying? Was the fact that they didn't credit black fighters the same as other fighters. They didn't put black fighters on the Gotti list. You understand? But eventually, guys like Al Heyman, they incorporated their fighters into the Gotti list type standards. And it shows today. PBC specifically, look at their fighters, look at the trend of their fighters. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to their black fighters. But these guys, they're not motivated. They're not disciplined, just like Errol Spence. They'll sit here. They're coddled. You know what I'm saying? They do stupid things outside the ring. They get drunk, substance abuse. A lot of them are mental midgets like the Charlos. And again, these dudes are always in trouble. You understand? They simulate childs who are coddled and raised by women. And you can just see it. And it was no different with Errol Spence. This guy, we'll talk about Kell Brook. You got the fighter guy coming off a loss and moving down 2 weight classes, coming off of surgery. But notice how you say guys that are trying to excuse Errol Spence for all his nonsense that he went through with his drinking and his car wrecks and being backup dancer Yellow Beezy. Look how you don't hold that same standard to Kell Brook. You know what I'm saying? Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. You've all played fantasy football, I'm assuming. You know that towards the end of the league, you get to what is called the consolation bracket in the championship, right? Well, you see, Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, they were both losers to Keith Thurman. This was the first guy they tried to prop up before Spence. And before him, it was Sean Porter, and before him, it was Danny Garcia. Before them, it was Adrian Broner. You understand? They've tried their best to try to build the next star over at PBC. And their thing that they strive for is fake it till you make it, just like everybody else today. They hold everybody now to the low standards, and you can see it. And this is why your fighters are undisciplined. This is why they get in trouble and everything else. But we just talked about Brook. You're coming off a loss. You understand? Had surgery, whatever else. and had to move down 2 weight classes. You just came off a loss to Triple G. You know, they had Mickey Garcia move up 2 weight classes. You understand? You're accumulating the names, for name recognition and things like that. But you're not really receiving true training and true preparation for when you face a real challenge. And this has happened to all of them. Once Broner fought a real one, he got decimated. That pretty much, destroyed his career. That was Marcos Maidana, by the way. It's been the same for them all. Once Porter, when he was fighting all the soft touches he was supposed to beat, he comes and he fights Kell Brook. And Kell Brook is nothing special. Kell Brook has been knocked down by domestic level competition in the United Kingdom, guys. His resume is piss poor. Look at the guys that he's fighting. Look at the losses that these guys have. So it's not like he was anything special. He's very good. He's got timing, things like that. But he's not a special fighter. He's not an exceptional fighter. You know what I'm saying? And look what he was able to do. He was able to expose Sean Porter. Now, I did some film studies on this. You guys should come check this stuff out because I know you're just coming from a casual standpoint when you make these arguments. But, this has happened to all the PBC fighters. Once they meet a real one, same with Deontay Wilder, you get exposed. Once you fight a guy who's not there to lie down, you get exposed. But Danny Garcia and Sean Porter got to fight the consolation bracket for a vacant belt that was thrown away by Keith Thurman. These guys are pampered. You understand? And their come up is manufactured. It's not organic. It's not real. You understand? They've tried to skip the process on what makes a diamond a real diamond. They synthetically make diamonds today. And you can just tell by the results. You're trying to do it in this artificial way, and you wonder why you can't produce another Floyd Mayweather. You wonder why you can't produce a real great fighter, and we're here trying to argue about Participation Award Hall of Fame today. But regardless, okay, so you fought the losers in the consolation bracket. They were given a vacant belt, and you get to fight the guy who won that. And then you went life and death with Sean Porter. You understand? You were a sizable favorite against Sean Porter. And I was telling guys back then, this is actually closer to a 50-50 fight. Spence, all he did in this fight was prove that he's a little bit better than Sean Porter. Sean Porter managed to hurt him. Sean Porter's not a power puncher. I can go through this stuff to a T, but you guys, you're not ready for all that. The bottom line is I addressed the overall problem about the situation. You guys are used to Participation Award. That's what you guys are used to. Your standards are based on Participation Award. So now, when Hall of Fame meant to be only for exceptional individuals who truly set themselves apart from the rest of the competition, it's now anybody can get in. Gotti can get in. You understand? Rocky can get in. He's not even a real boxer. Sylvester Stallone can get in into the Hall of Fame. It's become a joke because you don't push real fighters. Everybody's manufactured today. And then you have a guy like Crawford. They even went as far as getting Crawford kicked off the Olympic team for Gary Russell Jr. He never fit in with whatever these people were trying to do when grooming and conditioning these fighters. And it was actually a blessing because look what Crawford has done. There was about a 12 to 14-year gap of undisputed opponent between Jermaine Taylor and Terrence Crawford when he became undisputed. And as soon as Crawford became undisputed, what did the boxing world start? Oh, we can use this for our other fighters. So they hurry up. Everybody start getting undisputed all of a sudden. You understand? And, Crawford, he's the first to get two-time undisputed in this era. So now what are you starting to see? Everybody else is starting to get two-time undisputed. And this is a guy who was not given the red carpet treatment. This was not a guy that was given, being pampered and being coddled throughout his career. Now you guys are sitting here and you're basing your standards as well off a popularity contest. And I've already gone through this to a T. There's hours upon hours of footage covering, the Sean Porter fights, who I also told you wasn't going to do what a Mean Machine did, and Errol Spence. And then it started off with Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao, but we know the dude pulled out of that fight. You're just like Keith Thurman, your mentor. You know how to be injured and you know how to duck. You ducked Crawford for so many years, but I know that these people never had the confidence to fight Terrence Crawford. If Crawford's resume was piss poor, as you guys try to make it sound out to be, you should have been hurried up and fought Crawford, but that was not the case. They knew what the truth was from day one. And like I said, I even know what Derek James and Errol Spence were even talking about in their camp. You understand? The stories finally get around. They tried to use Floyd Mayweather to prop up Errol Spence, but when you come to find out the truth of what happened during that situation, it was when Floyd was getting out of jail. You understand? Early on in the camp, Spence was giving Floyd some problems, but later on in the camp, Floyd Mayweather basically had Spence knocked out on his feet from an uppercut, by the way. You see what I'm saying? I go far and deep into this stuff, and from your guys' perspective, if you pay attention, you're wondering, how is this guy able to see these type of things and call them out? It's a lot of research, guys. It's a lot of digging. It's a lot of work. You understand? It's a lot of work. But I try to find out is everything I can. Why did this guy duck Randall Bailey off for 2 weeks? Oh, because he's a puncher. Well, has Spence fought any power punchers in it? No. The answer's no. And that's for a reason, because they know he don't have a chin. And on top of that, you're a drunk, and you were a drunk far before the Sean Porter fights and everything else. It's right there for you to see. And you have people talking about how they're worried about Spence. Spence was a good kid, guys. He was a choir boy. This little persona that he tries to put on, it's not Errol Spence. Errol Spence was a good little mama's boy. You understand? If Errol Spence would have went down that path and stayed down that path, maybe he would have been greater. But at the end of the day, you're just another broner. You understand? You're just a dude with a troubled life. You're just a dude that hangs around stupid situations. And it shows. You guys, you believe the TV, though, and you believe that this guy was organically a great fighter when he was not. I'm telling you, he was a pampered manufactured fighter. And it's no different today. But you guys still value participation award. You understand? People don't like exceptionalism anymore. They don't like people who are the truth. I'll tell you what's more offensive than, race. When people are being racist and anything else, you'll see all colors of people gather together and come together to hate on somebody that they know is the truth. And that's where Crawford's been at his entire life. And it was no different again. They kicked him off the team for Gary Russell Jr. You understand? And where's Gary Russell Jr. today? You know what I'm saying? They want you to be mediocre today. And a lot of you hate people that are not mediocre like you and the people that you prop up. It's just that simple. But I've already addressed this, and it showed. You guys were sitting here saying that Spence fought better competition. And I'm here telling you that this dude's not even going to do what a meme machine did. Why am I able to call this out and you're not? Why am I able to see this and you're not? You know what I'm saying? And you can troll me in my comment section, but it's just about popularity contests and emotions with you guys. This is one of the biggest parts of your ranking system as well. Emotions and emotions and popularity contests. Me, I'm like, okay, there's a reason why they're making you fight these guys you're supposed to beat. You understand? There's a reason why you're ducking Crawford, although he hasn't fought no one. You're even willing to now fight Ugas. And just real quick as well, this guy ducked the rematch with Terrence Crawford. You guys are still trying to act like Spence is this real guy, and he's a bum, but it is what it is. You understand? But this guy himself said he don't care about Hall of Fame. And again, Crawford fought like a dude that cares about his accolades. Spence could only button mash all night long and let Crawford just counter him all night. It was a one-sided beatdown, just like I told you guys it was going to be. I also told you specifically he was going to get clipped early. Crawford was going to pick up on square, triangle real quick, But you guys, you've been raised by your single mother, and her, the father figures in your life, they didn't pay you no attention, you're going to go for what you relate more to, So, of course, you probably most likely relate more to Errol Spence, so you're more for his cause than to Terrence Crawford. And it's just no different with the boxing world. They hate the real fighters. They love the fake fighters. I've already gone through this process. It's fake it till you make it today. You guys are giving Spence's all kinds of excuses, but it's just further, I think, goes against the case of his Hall of Fame. Why should I let a drunk in that couldn't even do better than Meme Machine? And I've been making videos on this. I want to see Errol Spence fight a Meme Machine because I think a Meme Machine is more nuanced than a guy like Errol Spence. I think Meme Machine has better technique. He's also, better punch selection, things like that. He has more power. He has better punch mechanics. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to sit here and go full blown break down Errol Spence anymore. But you guys are used to lower standards, and you're used to acting like lower standards are better than those with higher standards. And even when it comes to Crawford's children, you can see his standard at play even with his own children. His children are over here winning state in wrestling. His daughter does this amazing thing where she loses his shoe and still beats everybody on the track. This stuff is even translating in Crawford's children. And you guys are still trying to deny Crawford for a popularity contest. And it's group therapy session at the end of the day. You guys sat here, you said how Spence was going to beat Crawford and Crawford hasn't fought no one. You guys sat here, you talked all this crap. You know, it's just, the bottom line is you just can't handle the truth. You don't want to deal with the truth. You guys still today do not see why Crawford did what he did to Errol Spence. Because you guys were educated on the TV. The TV told you Spence was the best. The TV told you Spence was a top 5 pound for pound fighter, although all he does is square, square, triangle and hit people in their balls. But, you know, regardless of what your eyes saw, regardless of the evidence, again, you don't want to deal with the truth. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the Democrats today. They still don't understand why they lost in such a one-sided fashion. You understand? Now they're having people go out here trying to blow up Teslas and things. You understand? But they still can't understand. They had the game rigged, just like Errol Spence, just like a Canelo. The game works for you. And you still lost. And I understand that's so hard for people to understand and accept. And now they want to turn violent. But it's no different with this Errol Spence. A bunch of you guys who drank the Kool-Aid, you still don't understand what happened. And you still can't accept the reality of it. When guys like me were telling you from day one what's going on and what's going to happen. You understand? So that's cool. You want Spence to earn a participation award. You're having mass group therapy session. You know, Crawford is a mean guy, although you guys sat here and ganged up on him. They blackballed him and everything else. You know, you said Crawford deserves 80-20. You wanted to play make-believe that Spence was a star, although Jerry Jones bought his tickets. You know, and Crawford was making more money than Spence the whole time. That's the funny part about it. You understand? You believe that Spence was selling to, you know, whatever fake pay-per-view numbers they were out there telling you he was selling. Why was this guy getting the same guaranteed purses as Sean Porter? You need to ask yourself that. But you guys don't want to deal with reality. You don't want to deal with facts. Why did Spence walk out second or walk out first and Crawford got to walk out last when they fought each other? You need to ask yourself this stuff. Does A-side really allow a coin toss? Do you understand? Oh, let me guess. Spence is just a stand-up guy. No, Crawford told you. He saw the Danny Garcia numbers. He saw the Ugas numbers. They weren't doing nothing. And this is what I was trying to tell you guys. And you guys were shocked when you found out your A-side dude is really, at best, B-plus side. We used to call Errol Spence B-plus side on this channel all day. You guys believed in a lie, and you still don't want to accept the truth. And you want reality to bend to your fantasy world that you want to believe in, but it's not true. If Errol Spence gets Hall of Fame, all it is a participation award, and Hall of Fame has no real merit to it anymore. You understand? Errol Spence, you know, he's became just like his mentor, Keith Thurman. They take long vacations and things like that. He's still ducking fights against Sebastian, you know, Fundora and whoever else. You know, they're probably still going to try to get him with the dude that can't really punch, which is probably why he avoided Fundora. They probably saw that was another beatdown for him. He's just been exposed, and you guys, you still can't accept it, but you want him to get a participation award, and you want to continue to ruin and water down the sport of boxing just to fit your emotions and your need for reality. On this channel, I deal with reality, guys, and I don't care what the topic is. If I'm talking about Bible stuff, I'm telling you the same process that I do with boxing is the same process when I go through that stuff. I look at all avenues. You understand? It's a lot of research. It's a lot of digging. I told you guys with World War III what these people were going to do. I told you they were going to try to continue this nonsense. They were going to try to start a civil war. This is what they're trying to do today. I haven't even told you guys about the crazy stuff. But regardless, you know, let's keep it boxing. I'm not going to digress. But a lot of you, you're just drones, and you're easily influenced. You don't have a mind of your own. You live in a fantasy world because you can't deal with the truth. You hate the truth. You want nothing to do with the truth. You know what I'm saying? And Errol Spence was never the truth. I'm sorry to tell that to you. You're just casuals. You really don't know what you're talking about. again, if he gets Hall of Fame just because they funneled him some opponents, hurried up, propped it up people as champions, this was another thing too, is they weren't doing this stuff for Crawford. When Canelo got undisputed, they threw in a belt when he fought, what's his name? They stripped Benavidez, you understand, and they threw in a belt for him when he fought Colin Smith or whatever that dude's name is from the UK. But they were doing everything to assist Canelo. And this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. A coddled manufactured fighter ain't going to beat a Terrence Crawford. You understand? It's just that's not going to be the case. And Errol Spence was one of Crawford's easiest fights. You understand? This is why he couldn't even do what a Mean Machine did. I've been wanting to see an Errol Spence fight a Mean Machine or someone of that caliber. I would love to see Errol Spence fight Madrimal. He'll probably get knocked out. Because you're not on fake it till you make it anymore. You've been exposed. And a lot of you still cannot accept the truth on this channel. This channel will always focus on truth, and it's going to be harsh. I'm just going to tell you the facts as I see them. I'll present to you film study, and I'll show you what you should be looking at. You understand? And then when you see it transpire in the fight, you're like, well, how did this happen? Again, a lot of you've been through this process with me. I got a lot of my views, when I was covering these fights, doing film studies and things like that. Managed to get monetized, and I wasn't even trying to get monetized. I may come out with one video a month, maybe. You know what I'm saying? That's probably my average. I don't even go crazy on this YouTube anymore. But I don't do this to blind hate. I'm not on your level. I don't do what you do. I don't see what you see. I don't feel how you feel. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. If you need Spence to get a participation award to feel better about yourself, that's you. That's fine. But all that's doing, it's continuing to water down boxing, and you wonder why boxing has been this traveling show like a circus. Boxing used to be secure, used to have stations, and this is premium cable like HBO. Boxing used to do wonderful in this country, and now it's doing horrible. And you got these fighters, they just, they got their little 15 minutes, and then you see them just like everybody else, they become washed up pretty quick today. It was the same for even guys like Deontay Wilder. You fed him a bunch of bums when you finally fought a real one. Here you are getting exposed. By a cherry pick gone wrong, they tried to cherry pick Tyson Fury, coming off a long layoff and things like that. Even in their most opportunistic time to strike at an opponent, these dudes still get exposed. And you guys, you just cannot see how this system works, and you fail to accept reality of the situation. You fail to see the truth of this situation. You know what I'm saying? They let Gotti in, they let Rocky in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame doesn't mean much anymore. It's become a participation award. My only thing is that guys like Mean Machine who've been blackballed out of the sport because they have power and they may be threats to these guys like Errol Spence who avoid power punchers and real risk, you understand? Even when I watch these fights, it seems like these dudes lay down. The Mickey Garcia and Errol Spence fight. Errol Spence throws like 1,300 punches, couldn't knock him out. It's the same with Sean Porter. They're both throwing 1,000 punches, And I told you guys back then as well, you're not going to get 700, 800, 900 punch Errol Spence. Crawford is a real fighter. Crawford tries to make the most out of a punch. You understand? These guys even fight fake. You know what I mean? Errol Spence has a video game character stance. There's nothing. You guys claim that he had fundamentals. I was trying to tell you he doesn't have fundamentals. He has a Mortal Kombat character stance for his style, and he does some pretty stupid things. And again, this stuff is already on here. You can look at all that footage from back in the day. A lot of it has video to it, so you get to see it as I explain it to you. But again, the bottom line is I already addressed this. You guys don't want to accept reality and you hate the truth. You know what I'm saying? And it's all about your emotions. It's all about popularity contests and you looking cool on the internet for the most part. Errol Spence is not an exceptional fighter. In fact, like I said, you only proved at the end of the day that you're a little bit better than Sean Porter, who you went life and death with. Sean Porter hurt you. Sean Porter's not a power puncher, guys. You guys fell for it. You guys, that's the world that you believe in. That's cool. But if Errol Spence gets Hall of Fame, all that signifies is that, it's a participation award. So it's not that I don't care that he gets it or not. It's just, it more in line proves my point and what I've been trying to tell you guys. Once you take merit out of a system, again, you know, you got to wonder why a guy like Me Machine, by your guys' standards, was able to do better than Errol Spence, who's supposed to be a Hall of Fame, according to you. It just shows you that the system is fake, and it just shows you that a lot of you are easily gullible and able to easily fall for this nonsense that you're being told. You know what I'm saying? And it's only going to get worse as time goes on. You know, people are just too dumb today. You know, that's a whole nother topic altogether. But again, if Errol Spence getting participation award makes you feel better, that's the same reason why he lost in a one-sided fashion that he did. And it's just going to continue to erode boxing, and it's going to continue to destroy and water down boxing, you know. And this has been the same for Western civilization as a whole. They want you guys more dumbed down, and they want you more stupid. And a lot of you, you're just taking the bait and you're drinking that Kool-Aid. But that's all I got to talk about for now. You know, I guess I'll get more into some boxing videos. This is for you, guy, since you wanted to step up to the plate and come at me. You know, I'm sorry, I can't give a dude credit for not doing better than even a meme machine. You know what I'm saying? He didn't even do as good as Jose Benavidez, a one-legged Jose Benavidez. I'm supposed to give this guy Hall of Fame and agree with you? No, it's not going to happen. I'm going to continue to think my way, and I know my way is highly more accurate. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.